Hello there! In the previous episode, we created a score calculation system. In this episode, we will create a function that rewards the player with some bonus according to the amount of collected pickups. Let's start by opening the player script. First, we need to create a variable that will store the collected pickups. This will be a new type of a variable for us. It is called list. Write public static list. And then inside of arrow brackets, we need to define which type of things we will store here. In this case, it's game objects that we want to store. So write game object there. After that, the name which can be collected pickups. Then equals to new list, arrow brackets, game object, parenthesis. Since this list is static, we need to clear it every time a new scene has been loaded. Inside of start function, write collected pickups dot clear and parenthesis. Now this list will not keep the pickups stored from previous levels, but every level will have their own. Next, we need to think how to add pickups to this list. We want to add a pickup when it's picked up, so head to onTriggerEnter and locate the case for pickup. Under the score, write collected pickups dot add and parenthesis. Inside of the parenthesis, we need to define what we want to add. The pickup, of course. So write other.gameObject there. Okay, now we add and clear things from the list. Next, we will use this information to reward the player with bonus. So head to the bottom of the script. Here, we will create a new custom function which will do the calculations. Write void add bonus score. Before we start to calculate the bonus, we could test that our list is working properly. We will write a line of code that will display the size of our list in console. Write print, parenthesis, size of the list in double quotes, plus collected pickups dot count. Then we need to call this function somewhere. Let's call it when we collect the pickups. In the case for pickup, write add bonus score and parenthesis. We will use this line only for testing and remove it later. Now, save the script and return to Unity. Nice, it works! When we collect the pickups, console displays the size of the list. Let's get back to code. Erase the add bonus score from the pickup case. Then get back to the bottom of the script to edit our function. You can comment out the printing line as we don't need it now. Alright, let's start writing the calculations. The formula is pretty simple, but there will be a couple of new things code-wise. The first new piece of code is the for loop. For loop repeats the block of code inside of it as long as the conditions are met. Write for and parenthesis. Inside of the parenthesis, there are three sections which are separated by semicolon. In the first section, we can declare and initialize a variable. The first section will run only once in the beginning of the loop. In the second section, we need to define the condition which will define how many times this loop will run. And in the third section, we can increment or decrement any variables we want. The section 2 and 3 will run on every iteration of the loop. Let's start writing them. Inside of the parenthesis, write int I equals to 0 and a semicolon. Here we define a variable called I, which is the type of int, and set it to 0. Next, we need to define the limit to how many times the loop should run. For this, we will use the size of the pickup list. Write I, less than sign, collected pickups, dot count, and a semicolon. This means that this loop will run as long as I is less than the amount of pickups the player has collected. Then in the last section, after each time the loop runs, we want to increase the variable I by 1. Write I plus plus. Next, we will write the code that calculates the bonus. We could give the player a 5% bonus of the total score, which then will be repeated by the for loop as many times as is the number of collected pickups. Write UI controller dot score plus equals UI controller dot score multiplied by 0.05f. Multiplying the score with a float value will result in an arrow because it is of type int. No worries though. There is a function that rounds floats into ints. Write mathf dot round to int and then put parentheses around the score multiplication. If the player has collected 3 pickups, for loop will add a 5% bonus 3 times to the score. The for loop might look confusing and difficult to understand, but don't worry, it will get easier to grasp with time. Then we need to figure out when to call this function. It should be done at the end, when level is finished or game is over. In other words, when player collides with enemies or the trigger area of the finished game object. Let's start with the collision of the player and projectile. Inside of the if statement, write add bonus score, parenthesis, and semicolon. Copy this line so that we can paste it to the following cases. Next collision is with finish. Paste this line there. And the last collision is with enemies. Paste it there as well. We need to create an if statement inside of this enemy case because there is a loophole. When the player is dead and the snail moves around and touches the player's corpse multiple times, bonus points will still be rewarded. We need to put this block of code inside of the if statement and set a condition that it will run only if the player is not dead. So, write if is dead. This should take care of it. Let's save the script and test our bonus function in action. Wonderful, it works! The player gets a nice but not too big bonus. Great work! Now we have a function that calculates bonus score and we learn to use for loop. In the next episode, we will create a power-up function that gives the player temporary invincibility. See you in the next episode.